All right. So you went back to work. They still didn't let you keep your gun. You got written up, or no, no, no. They were trying to do all that shit to you. Uh,
Yeah.
and you were like, no. So you wanted your Skelly hearing. Okay. And then what happened after that?
So they returned me to my normal duties, right? My normal caseload just without my gun. And they just said that it was at the discretion of the chief. They would never tell me why. And basically, it was a pride thing. So, not very long after that, all of a sudden, Buck Ganter sends out this like corny ass email that says, I'm gonna, retire early and I'm gonna like take my winnings and fly off into Potter Valley and raise some sheep kind of shit. And basically later we find out that he was forced. I mean, he had to go. They were going to give him the benefit of letting him just duck and cover, and he was forced to resign because he handled that so shitty, and everybody knows it. Um, County council had told me that basically that should have never happened. They just, anyways, it was a shit show. So I go back to life and I'm there to like prove that I can do it without a gun, right? Because now I'm like, what do I do? So I hung on as long as I could, but then I was like showing up in the field and Noble would show up. And like I had this scarlet letter, right? Like the gun was gone. So it made it seem like I had done something wrong. So I just showed up every fucking day to be like, you know what? I'm still here and I'm still going to show up. So I started calling, like I said, Eister and was like, hey, are you going to prosecute this guy? Like it's all out there. And after 3 times of bugging them, Andy Alvarado shows up at my office and hands me this list that basically says, or this letter, this bullshit letter that says that Dave Eister feels in his legal bullshit authority that I had violated Brady and that I had Brady issues, and he was going to formally put me on some bullshit Brady list. So basically,
So
he was right.
really quick, let me just so everyone. So Dave Eister, he still is. He was the DA, the district attorney at the time. Andy Alvarado was one of the district attorney investigators that gave you that letter. And Brady, again, for those of you that don't know, if you lie in an official capacity as a law enforcement officer, you're put on a Brady list, which basically your career is done at that point. Because every time you go into court to testify for one of your cases, they're going to say, like, oh, you are on a Brady list, meaning you are a documented liar and you can never testify to anything ever again for your entire career. So your career as a cop, as a probation officer, parole officer, whatever it's going to be, that's a wrap. So I just wanted to clear that up. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you're literally put on a legit Brady list, that's what would happen. Like some of the guys you've talked about,
Yeah.
they're on the Brady list like 6 times and they still got hired because they're
Yeah.
all buddies, right? Like
Yeah.
Quincy and Derek and all of them. So,
Well, yeah, Quincy Cromer actually never got put on a Brady list.
oh, because he resigned and
He
then got hired before, right?
Yeah. So he lied, got proven to lie, or they proved that he lied, and he got to quit because of who his
Bottom lies.
yeah his daddy-in-law was. And then yeah, so that all got, he got the hookup on that. Not like you didn't get
Well,
a hookup.
I mean, Eister did try though. He did. He tried. They tried to say, well, if you just want to resign, I
Right.
won't put you on this
Right.
list. And I said, you know what? Actually, put me on the list twice and send me a copy because I'm going to frame that shit. Because I knew that that meant that I stood up for something. Like, please put me on the list and please prove that you did. And there's no list. I was
So
not on a list.
why so they tried to put you on the list because the first time back when Jason Costa told Freddie Keplinger, and then Freddie, they did all that shit, that first investigator that came and talked to you that was clearly trying to save the ass of the Ukiah Police Department, you weren't forthcoming with information, which is
Yeah.
totally logical. You didn't feel like coming out at that point when you get blindsided to say, like, yeah, he hits me or whatever. So because you didn't say it then, but you said it later to Andy Porter, the district attorney is now saying that you are a liar and wanted to put you on this Brady list. That's what happened,
Yeah.
right?
Which is interesting because I wasn't in my official capacity. I was a
No,
human. I was a
no,
mom. I was a victim.
no, you're
And
not.
unlike many people we know who are on that list or should be on that list, this had nothing to do with work. I wasn't even the one that disclosed it. Don Tipton, Jason Costa, Derek Kendry, all of those guys that I worked with just ran their mouths, made it a huge deal. And then my chief ended up just following, Dave Barrett, Brady Bechtel, all of which have shitty shit show lives, right? Like they're all a mess. And
Yeah.
yet, anyways, he was led by a bunch of sheep and so, yeah, so basically I was like, go ahead and put me on that list then, and then send me an extra copy. I would like that. And so of course my department then uses that against me too, to substantiate why I shouldn't have a gun, I guess. But they couldn't fire me. I mean, at this point, everybody knew that they couldn't get me for anything. I hadn't done anything wrong. And then they just looked the other way for Noble. So he gets promoted. I get my gun taken away. Then he just keeps going up the ladder. So I stayed in that. So basically, I still testified. It's not like, I mean, a Brady issue is only an issue if a defense attorney doesn't know about it.
Right.
So yeah, so moving forward, I stayed as long as I could and just showed up every day, just trying to keep my head held high, and felt like a piece of shit. Meanwhile, Noble, again, and his department showing up to her school and giving these presentations about how great guys they are and how you can trust them. And so Maddie started slipping kind of into this like really deep depression. Like now everybody blames her for what they think is these false allegations because nobody did anything. I have to show up every day with this like hole in my hip with no gun. And everybody's like, wait, I thought you were the victim. Clearly you must have made it up. And like, we did it as long as we could until life got to be so unmanageable that I was like, I don't ever want to stay. I don't want to be here anymore. So Buck had been fired. The new Pamela chief had come in, and Judge Mormon had told me, hey, we think like she's a female. We think she's going to give you back your gun and restore your hope. So I stayed. And then I met with her and was like, I was like, hey, like, my situation, everybody does. And she's like, yeah, I talked to Eister and I've decided I'm not giving you your gun back. So that just reaffirmed that Eister was very much involved, and it was all a pride thing, right?
Didn't she say something like, oh, maybe I can show?
Oh, yeah. So she's like, but maybe I could go and like shake my little ass in front of Dave Eister and, my womanly ways maybe. And I literally said at that moment, you know what, keep your gun. And I said to her, I would rather prostitute my body for the rest of my life than I would ever work for this department. And I gave my notice.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. And she was like, you don't mean that. I'm not taking your notice. And I repeated it. I would literally rather prostitute my body to take care of my family than to stay working for this fucking department or live in this piece of shit town. And so I dipped. I put in my notice. I gave him 3 weeks just to be nice. And we packed up and moved to Southern California, where we knew nobody. And I had no job because I couldn't deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I just want to say this too, like, since I did work for that agency, it was a short period of time, but I didn't have any issues there. I didn't get written up. I didn't leave on bad terms. I left and got hired as a deputy with the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office, but I will definitely back you up on that place, the probation department, is very, just good old boys as it fucking gets. It's all like who you're clicked up with at there, and it was ran like dog shit. Thank God Eisen took that over, who's like one of the very few competent humans at that agency. Yeah. But it was so much drama. It was like basically like middle school all over in that place. So everything you said is 100% factual, and your friends or people that you thought you were friends that are other probation officers there that you thought were going to get your back when you were reporting it to Porter, and they didn't. When they had every opportunity to. That just goes to show you that they're what kind of people they are and how that place is actually ran, right?
Yeah, it was like they didn't mind getting involved when the spotlight wasn't on them, but as soon as the spotlight was on the situation, they were like, I'd rather stay out of it. And it was flooding us down over and over again, because here we are and we actually need your help for once, and maybe your drama could come to use for once. And
actually, like, one of those people, Dawn Tipton, just reached out to me, her and my friend Jamaica, who was a probation officer there and luckily left and went to do bigger things in Sonoma County.
Yeah.
They had some kind of beef over me, I guess, not believing me and just being fake as fuck as all these people are.
Yeah.
And Dawn reached out to me like a couple months ago randomly and was like, just so you know, I always believed you. I knew I supported you. I was always here for you. And I'm thinking, okay, where have you been? And I wouldn't want their help anyways, because they're literally the reason this shit happened. So a lot of fake people just have been contacting me even more now that, Noble's in his new situation and people are starting to believe,
Right. Yeah. So it's really funny how that works too. And yeah, so let's talk about that. So when you left, so first of all, you didn't get fired, you quit. And you lasted longer there than I would have or anybody else would have for sure. So props to you for that. But when you left, so that's when this started the civil suit of you suing the county, which included Butt Ganter, the old chief for the probation office, Dave Eister, and then I don't know who else. And then also you sued Noble, all rightfully so. So how did that process start? And then like how long did it take? And then obviously the ending that just happened recently.
So my friend Victoria, who I worked with, she's now a judge there. She was an attorney, and her and Keith Folder both were going to represent me, but then they both decided they were going to run to be judge. And so they referred me to a firm that had heard about my case. They had talked about it. They contacted us and said, we would be honored to represent you. We've heard what happened. It's total bullshit. Everybody knows it. We'd already moved out of town. So we flew up there and met with them. They filed like a 40-page complaint, basically just laying out everything that had happened, workplace retaliation, all of the injuries that Noble committed on me in front of the kids that they were subjected to. It was a huge complaint. It was the county of Mendocino. They should have never let that happen. They should have never investigated me. In hindsight, we probably should have went after Ukiah Police Department for their failure to their due diligence to investigate him.
Yeah.
And I insisted I wanted to go after Dave Eister, even though from the get-go, everybody said there's no way I could win because he's protected. So the most corrupt and high power official in the county, which just keeps getting re-elected, he's completely protected. So just because I technically didn't win against him, it's because he's protected by the law. But instead of just saying, well, let's just put him aside, I was like, no, I want to go after him. So we fought that for a few years in federal court, only to be told exactly what we knew, that, but at least it's documented. My name is always going to be on there saying that I tried to expose the fake fuck that he is. And
he's protected by an
anti-slap and basically immunity, prosecutorial immunity, which I understand on one level is needed for prosecutors. But what he does on a daily basis, and what he continues to do, is completely illegal.
Right. No, for sure. Yeah. It's really interesting how that works out. So
but I tried, I did my best. And
so that process went on from what, 2018? 17?
2017 is when the complaint was filed and served on everybody. And then it took, it takes a long ass time. So we had to split off and handle Eister in federal court first. And then the other people just kind of sat on ice. And then they ruled that in Eister's favor, of course. And then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of COVID, miraculously, the wonderful professionals at Superior Court of Mendocino County, somebody accidentally closed my case. So it took me almost a year to get that thing back open. And I had to do that myself. And I finally was like, I will fly up there tomorrow. I will literally make such a spectacle. Like, somebody is screwing with me. They opened it back up.
So when we were looking on the court portal and our case said closed, and we said, no, that's not accurate. So I think we both called, and they were like, well, I don't know, we have to go find it in a box in the basement, because Ukiah is still in the 1950s. And they were like, we have to check into this, give us a little while. Come to find out, we just found this out a few months ago. They blamed it on, they were transferring from physical paper files to the electronic version of the system, and it accidentally got closed. It just conveniently got closed in the middle.
So that put off like the case another year and a half, and then COVID and all this bullshit. So basically we were pushing up close to the 5-year period, which I didn't actually know was the statute, that 5 years the case has to go to trial or it could be dismissed. So all of a sudden we ramp up. But I think the reason that actually we got this thing ramped up was because the media started getting involved. And looking back, I think the worst thing we ever could have done was remain so silent, because it allowed everybody to make these determinations and let Noble just keep getting promoted, which is great for him, because the further that he got up, the farther he was going to fall eventually. But, you know, nobody knew about it. They claimed they didn't know that we had been done so wrong. And so once the local reporter, Dave Brookshire, and you put it out there, you were the first person to actually have the balls to say anything. And then the LA Times got involved. And then all of a sudden, all of these people are like, oh, maybe this case should go to trial.
KWL. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then people cared. So we appreciate you doing that for us.
Of course.
And yeah, so then we got up to the last hearing.
From there, I remember getting a text message one day, and someone was like, hey, have you gotten the news yet? And I was like, no, what happened? They were like, Noble got promoted to chief. And I was like,
that was tough.
That was the cherry on top for me, because we were feeling so hopeless going through this whole legal process. It was so draining, and it was a constant, you know, you have to disclose that when she was going through backgrounds, and, you know, your backgrounds get lengthy when you have a case against, especially a previous employer. And that was just like the motivation that I think we needed to keep going, because it was like, now we have to do something. There's no way that he can be in that position.
Like, and we always wondered, why would he put himself out there in such a high position, knowing that he's guilty? Because this whole time he knows he's guilty, and everybody around him, why are you going to put yourself in such a high position that now you have no protection? You're an at-will employee. You're running a department that you have no business running. You're a criminal. And then
I mean, you know why. I mean, it's the ultra type A, like nothing's actually going to happen to me. I'm a badass. You know, it's like just Derrick Henry all over again. So okay, so this court thing went on for years, and I'm sure Mendocino County just happened to accidentally get rid of your case. Yeah, that definitely checks out for sure. And then it's really funny too, like how not just your case, but other cases that have gone on, you know, involving law enforcement recently in Mendocino County, how shit doesn't get done until somebody blasts it, like, you know, into the media. It's really interesting how that works. And they think that they can cover it. And, you know, the DA's office and all those guys are probably pissed that the internet exists nowadays, because they can't do this shit like they could back in the fucking 80s and 90s, you know? Anyway, so your case against the county and against Noble Weidlich finally just concluded, and that was what, like a month ago, 2 months ago?
I think it was, one was in July, right before your wedding, right? Yeah, July.
It was a few weeks before I got married.
Oh, I'm way off.
And then Noble's was not too long ago. It was like a couple months ago. I don't know. It's all a blur. So basically, Judge Nadell, we were told with absolute confidence that she was going to, whatever part of the case was left, that she was going to absolutely just blunder, and she was going to dismiss everything. So we were told, like, you settle or take it to trial. I wanted to go to trial. I really wanted to see this aired out. But nobody had faith in her to see it through and do the right thing. So the county came to us and said they wanted to settle. And basically they, you know, they'll always say, well, we're not going to admit guilt, but by signing this document and giving you money, we're admitting that we did wrong. And the deal was that It's crazy. They were going to write me some letter saying how, because I had no background issues. That legit was never an issue. I had not a bad mark in my personnel file for 10 years with the county. So they just wanted to sweeten the deal and reiterate that on paper because they think that meant something. And so basically I settled with them, and I really wanted to make sure that they had taken ownership for what they had done. And now that Eisen's running the department, I have no doubt that he's going to do a great job. Yeah. But 100%, we stuck out for them to own what they did, and they did.
They actually said they implemented a new policy.
Or they're going to look at policies, changes so that this doesn't happen in the future. But
yeah, for sure.
But what? So, I mean, that's about as good as you're going to get for a government agency, and everybody else gets off the hook. Buck Ganter doesn't have to go through anything. Dave Barrett, Jason Costa, Brady Bechtel, Pamela, whatever her last name is now, Don Tipton, all these people that were involved, and all of them are off the hook now. But now I get to talk about it and do whatever I want with it.
And then after I turned 18, I filed a complaint against Noble separately. And so then we eventually, after a long process, we combined our cases because we had a separate case for the county, we had a separate case for her against Noble, and then we had a separate case for myself against Noble. So we eventually combined them just to make the court proceedings easier. And then we came to a settlement agreement. What was it, in October?
A couple months ago.
It was a few months. I can't even remember the month. We came to a settlement agreement with Noble as well.
So yeah,
that was a little bit of that was hard for us because we were presented with Noble has now lost his job. He got fired for unrelated allegations and policy breaks, supposedly, which he's still under investigation for. So we were faced with this problem because if that mandatory settlement conference would have happened a few months earlier, we would have been in a much better position. But now here he is with no job and really has nothing to lose anymore. So he walked into the conference and basically said, I'm prepared to go file bankruptcy if you don't accept my offer. And
he was like, basically, you just take, I have nothing left. Like, I'm an old fuck with these kids, with a wife that hopefully hates me. He has no career aspects. All of these people are finally starting to figure out that what we've been saying this whole time is true. Yeah. And then they're like, he's like, I have no money left. I've leveraged everything.
He said that these are my assets, and it was nothing. And we said, no, that's not happening. We did not go through the emotional and mental toll that you put on us, my brother, myself, and my mom. It was like the things that he put us through were just the most awful. And we knew that no amount of money was never going to fix it, but it was something. It was something to be able to make up for the stress that we went through to come up with the money to get a new car and to find a house and to survive, with my mom being a single mom of my brother and I. It was a struggle. So I was motivated to get something, and whether that was verbal, whether that was monetary, it was up to him. And he said, this is what I have. If you don't accept this, I will literally walk out of the courthouse right now and go file bankruptcy. And we negotiated a little bit, and our attorney kind of explained to us that if we didn't agree, we would then have to wait for him to file bankruptcy, which could take a really long time. And then we have to represent our entire case in a bankruptcy court and basically convince a bankruptcy judge that our emotional and physical damages are worth something.
Because basically they would pay off some debt, right? But we would have to like convince a judge and plead our case to even hear us. And if they would even hear us, then we had to say that our expenses were more important than all the other people they were going to stiff, right, and leave standing. And that was if the judge even heard our case. So basically he shows up to court again with nobody by his side, no supporters, looking like a wet dog that had been beaten like he beat me, just looking like poor me, literally has lost the respect, hopefully, of everybody, and was basically like begging us to just settle because, you know, he's this old man with these young children. And I'm like, but you didn't care about us. So we took it upon ourselves to say, you know what, enough is enough. We have fought it to the point where he showed his true colors. He's admitting, you know, he wouldn't have entered into any kind of an agreement had he not wanted to take responsibility. And we get to talk about it now, however, for the rest of our lives. And we plan to do so.
And then at the very end of our court interactions, this was enough for me. I could have walked away with literally nothing and just this, and I would have been happy. At the very end, our attorney looked at my mom and I, and he said, if you want to say something, you have the right to say something, and now is the time to do it. We weren't allowed to say anything in the courtroom just because it's not that kind of hearing. So I waited outside of the courtroom. My mom and I both did with our attorney. And I wanted to wait for him so that I could just get my final thoughts out and so that I could have some closure from all of this. And I waited, and his attorney walked out and he put his hand in my face and he said, we're going to wait for you to leave. And I said, actually, I have some things that I need to say to Noble. And he said, again, we're going to wait for you guys to leave. So I walked past his attorney and I said, no, I'm going to say something. And Noble physically ran back into the courtroom.
He to get away. Yeah, like, it was embarrassing.
I had so much secondhand embarrassment for him because here I am. I was the little girl who was, you know, crying in my room when he would scare me, and now he was running away from me. So we again waited for him because he had to come out at some point. And at that point, I was like, I don't even have words for you. There's nothing that we could say other than some very.
It was just very pathetic. Yeah. And so I told him that he was a coward, which he is, and that's the least he deserves. And he couldn't look at her in the face. He looked at me and pouted and did his old bullshit, like, poor me, I've ruined my own life. But he would not even look at her. And you know, she's taken the brunt of this. And, you know, my son's chosen to be kind of out of the limelight because he has been in the military and has some pretty high credentials and has chosen to keep his mouth shut for now. But he very much was prepared to go and tell everything. And, you know, he's kind of gotten lost in all of this because he hasn't been as visual. But, you know, had Maddie not had the strength to do what she did, not even intending to, you know, she saved all of us. And as a result, we got out of that shitty ass place and have done some amazing things. So, yeah, so for that to be the end of it, like she said, there's no amount of money. Right. It was just priceless. The pathetic. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember you had told me a few times that, Amanda, that it was never about the money. Like you had told me that you wanted him to just apologize to you publicly, right? Yeah. Which he's never going to. Yeah, he's never going to do it because, like you said it perfectly, he is a coward, and him running away from Maddie is a true testament to his insane lack of character. But so Mendocino County paid you guys money, Noble paid you guys money, clear indicators that they both fucked you guys over, and they just admitted 100% guilt to that, because if Noble was innocent, why would he give you guys one penny that he needs for himself, because he's been fired for, you know, the rumor is forcing some girl to give him oral sex, which I'm sure the DA is obviously, well, what do you guys think? Well, first of all, I just want to say, like, I can't imagine what you guys had to go through with that. And I know it's been a long time. And I know, Amanda, that I've known you for a while now, and I've talked to you about that, throughout the years. And it's so fucking rough. I mean, all that shit that you had to go through and ruin your career, which you were really good at and that you enjoyed over, and you're a victim of domestic violence. And it's funny too. It's not funny, but it's like, it is kind of funny. Like now that he's put himself in this situation with this new criminal case, like people are finally, I mean, you still have the idiots that are going to be like, oh no, that chick's full of shit too. And it's like, really, guy, like all these females going against this dude are just like magically full of shit because what, he happened to be a cop before. Give me a fucking break. Yeah. But that it takes something like that now for people, now that your cases are settled and like people reaching back out to you, like, oh, hey, like I always, I hope you're doing well or whatever. And it's like, get fucked.
Yeah. Yeah, they were nowhere to be found. And and that's the interesting thing, is that we did so much better for ourselves once we left that toxic place.
Yeah.
And left without a job. It's like, I don't know. It's just very ironic, and we just appreciate everything you've done for us.
Yeah, of course.
We had to keep our mouth shut because we were told that we could, affect the integrity of the case, and we thought we were doing right by that, but we don't have anything to prove to anybody. We know the whole time we've known what the truth is, and he knows what the truth is, certainly. But it's been really rough, the really long 7 years, and we did it exactly for that reason, is to show I wouldn't have settled had I been the one on the other side of this. Right. Because I didn't do anything wrong, and I didn't settle in Mendocino County. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone on to do bigger and better things. I stuck to it because the truth is the truth. And just because I didn't disclose it at the pace that the DA and the department, and they weren't going to do shit anyways, but that's what they wanted to hang their hat on, was, oh, she's a liar because she didn't disclose. I was under no obligation as a human, as a mom, or as a probation officer to disclose at any rate that I wasn't comfortable with, because I'm a victim and I had a right to be a victim, just not to them.
Yeah. And that's just ignorant people that don't understand, especially in small communities, like Mendocino County and Ukiah specifically, and in the law enforcement world, like how corrupt it is. And there's certain people that just refuse. It still boggles my mind. It really does. They just refuse under any circumstances to believe that the DA or the chief of probation or a cop or, Lieutenant Derek Hendry could be criminals. They could be shitbags. They could lie. They could hook up their homies. It's like, I've visually seen it and I've heard it myself. And at the end of the day, you're going to have those types of people no matter what. But what's important for you guys now is that it's done. Nothing's going to ever fix completely or give you guys back what you lost, of course. But there has to be some sort of closure a little bit, or some, minor satisfaction now, at least, not the money itself, but the fact is that it's done. And what that settlement did prove is that those fools all lied and they're full of shit and they're guilty as hell. Right. Yeah. So really quick, we have like 5 minutes left, but what do you think, Amanda, about the top secrecy? This is the most secret thing I've ever seen in my entire life, like CIA, like government type shit, where Noble's case right now is you will be, if you're still a cop and you talk about it, you're automatically fired, pretty much. Like the guys in the county that investigated it and everybody else, they were all told, and I know this for a fact, that were involved in the investigation, if you say anything, you're done. What do you think about that? I think he's getting hooked up still because of who he was.
Which is interesting, because had all of the people that talk shit about had I had that same benefit, maybe my case wouldn't have, maybe I would have still been employed there and not hated the place, right? Like, everybody knew my business before I even did. And yet I don't know. I think it has something to do with the allegations being sexual in nature, is what the rumor, it sounds like that's been the rumor the whole time. And maybe hopefully they're just respecting the victim's privacy. I don't know who is actually putting their foot down and has their moral compass all of a sudden straight, because they want to keep this victim's anonymity. And I have no clue how he has the privilege and the benefit of having it so secret when you know every single person knows that by them keeping it secret, they're keeping this whole sick shit safe, right? Like, it's not protecting her, it's protecting him. No doubt that he is somehow going to convince somebody to hire him again to do something. And it's 100% for his benefit.
Well, and they don't even need to release the victim's name. The fact that the DA's office in Sonoma County were saying it's an assault. They didn't even say it was a sexual assault. They said it was an assault, indicating that he like maybe pushed somebody. But you see it all the time in, like, look at the sheriff in Polk County in Florida, that dude that goes on YouTube all the time and he roasts everybody that does anything wrong. He's putting out, you know, information sometimes along those lines. Other agencies are as well, where they're saying, hey, this guy's under investigation for this. He's been arrested for this. They're putting that information out there. And I've seen it done in Mendocino County before too. They just did it recently with a firefighter. But because Noble was the chief of police with Ukiah PD, I still feel that they can provide more what's going on. There's still zero transparency there. And I don't know. I just think that
agree. I think also if you compare it to Kevin Murray.
Yes.
It's something that I would be highly concerned if I still lived in that community. And thank goodness, like, we got our family out of there, because it should be alarming for the people who live there. That if you compare, I'm not saying that they are the same case. I don't know the facts right now. All I know is rumors. But if you compare the two, they are publicly shaming Kevin Murray, as they should. However, if you compare the two, there was no secrecy with his. And the only difference is their level in the department.
And the only reason it got as far as it did, where any of those victims saw any justice, whatever that may be, any kind of justice, is because those allegations got out there and they couldn't sweep that under the rug. So, I mean, hopefully at some point this victim will, whatever happened, or any victim in the future, chooses to actually believe, like, we've done something,
or
that
victims in the past.
To actually have the guts to say something, because the more it's kept secret. I mean, I've been told by an old board of supervisors member that had he known at the time what was happening to us, that this would have never occurred, and all of those guys that I've listed that worked for the county would have been fired. He's absolutely appalled. But come to find out, the board of supervisors close to the county, it literally was across the street from them. They had no clue what was going on. So secrecy just allows this shit to keep happening. And then
scary.
And then they go on to commit more crimes. And the fact that Noble got away with murder, literally, that's what I feel like the circumstances in our case. And then he goes on to screw up his own, like, future, was just beautiful. Like, finally the mask fell off.
It was like watching karma happen in real time, and that's not something very many people get to see. So
it was, I mean, when you're that type of person, it's only a matter of time, right, before you get caught
and
up.
People can't blame us for it, right? He can't be like, oh, you know, he did it to himself. And that's the beautiful part.
That's something I'm really thankful for. No one can ever say that we were the reasons that he, you know, lost his whole life and lost his job or whatever it is. Like, he did that to himself over and over and over again. And that just goes to show who he is.
So hopefully, you know, the public will keep pressing and the media will keep pressing, because
open their eyes.
That's the only way that they're ever going to get any details. And I have no faith that Dave Eister will ever do anything. He won't, unless people make him. And, you know, it's like one of those things. It's like that secret that nobody wants to, everybody knows what Eister and what that county, the sheriff's department, everybody is about. But they've just been able to get away with it for so long that there's no consequences. So
all right, well, we are out of time. Thank you both very much.
We appreciate you a lot, Trent. Thank you for helping us.